Ye-Sool is a talented and confident account manager at Ye-Sool, an advertising company known for her professionalism and creativity. However, her outward success hides her unusual gift. When she touches another person with her lips, she can see fragments of their future. This ability she tries to keep secret, as it not only interferes with her personal life, but also makes her feel uncomfortable because she sees those events that she would rather not know. At work, she has a complicated relationship with her boss, Min-Hoo, one of the company's most prominent executives. He is a man with a unique ability to hypersensitize his environment. His sensory skills allow him to acutely sense the slightest changes, making him impeccable at work. However, his strict, cold nature and demanding nature towards his colleagues create a tense working atmosphere, especially in his relationship with Ye-Sool. He controls every aspect of the project, constantly maintaining high standards, which often leads to confrontations with other employees. In the midst of working on an important project requiring an advertising strategy for a major client, the conflict between Ye-Sool and Min-Hoo reaches a climax. They are discussing ideas for a campaign, and their approaches differ dramatically. Min-Hoo, accustomed to strict discipline, tends toward practical solutions, while Ye-Sool prefers a more creative and emotional approach that she believes will better capture the audience's attention. As the two of them review important documents and discuss the details of the project, something unpredictable happens. In the heat of the discussion and while trying to grab the papers from the table, Ye-Sool accidentally touches Min-Hoo's neck with her lips. This incident triggers her ability. A vision of their future instantly flashes before her eyes. In this vision, she sees herself and her boss in a romantic and intimate relationship. This future completely shocks Ye-Sool. After all, she and Min-Hoo can barely be in the same room without arguing with each other, and here she sees them as a couple. An inner turmoil comes over her. Never before has her ability produced such vivid and real pictures. The vision is so precise and clear that she can't just ignore it. Realizing that it could be a harbinger of real events, Ye-Sool becomes alarmed whenever she finds herself near Min-Hoo. Her attitude toward him changes dramatically from professional to emotionally withdrawn and anxious. Min-Hoo, being a person of keen perception, immediately notices the changes in Ye-Sool's behavior. Her nervousness, her attempts to avoid eye contact, and even the slight tremor in her voice all catch his attention. He senses that something has changed, though he doesn't realize what the cause is. This makes him suspicious, since Ye-Sool has always been calm and confident before. Min-Hoo wonders what could have caused such a sudden change. For Ye-Sool, the situation becomes even more unbearable. She begins to avoid any situation in which she might be near Min-Hoo for fear of being touched again or having new visions. Her fear of the possibility of her vision becoming reality intensifies. Remembering past experiences when her predictions always came true, she realizes that the vision may not just be random but inevitable. Her attempts to ignore Min-Hoo at work begin to raise even more questions for him. He's not used to being shunned, and besides, being someone with hypersensitive perceptions, he senses that Ye-Sool is hiding something. This fuels his interest and makes him pay more attention to her, which in turn increases her anxiety. Each new workday becomes a challenge for her. The growing tension between them becomes noticeable not only to themselves but also to other co-workers. The office begins to notice oddities in their behavior and discuss changes in their attitudes toward each other, which only adds fire to the situation. Ye-Sool begins to wonder how long she can keep her distance from Min-Hoo and hide the truth about her gift. Trying to cope with the situation, Ye-Sool becomes more and more immersed in thinking about her visions. She tries to analyze whether it's possible to change the future she sees, or whether she's doomed to live it as her visions have shown her. The situation is made worse by the fact that her predictions have never been wrong, and this makes her panic more and more. She begins to look for ways to escape her fate, but with each passing day she realizes that she is getting closer to becoming part of the future she fears. However, despite her best efforts to stay away from Min-Hoo, circumstances at work force them to interact more and more. Projects require them to work together, and unresolved issues continue to push them into frequent contact. The more she tries to avoid him, the closer they find themselves, and the more her anxiety grows. At the same time, Min-Hoo begins to notice that his own feelings for Ye-Sool are changing. He's becoming more and more thoughtful about what's behind her behavior, and he's beginning to feel an interest in her that used to merge. His intuition and hypersensitivity allow him to notice things that others can't, but he doesn't fully understand the changes that are taking place between them. After Ye-Sool sees a future in which she and her boss Min-Hoo find themselves in an intimate relationship, her anxiety grows. She becomes increasingly withdrawn and wary around him, trying her best to avoid the situation she saw. The internal conflict between her desire to prevent the future and her inability to forget what she has seen undermines her confidence. The vision is too vivid and detailed to ignore, but she can't accept it either. Every time she is near Min-Hoo, her excitement intensifies, and thoughts of the possible inevitability of this future cause her to drift farther and farther away from him. Meanwhile, Min-Hoo, being hypersensitive, can't help but notice her changed behavior. His keen perception of the environment and the emotional state of the people around him helps him catch the slightest changes in the behavior of the employees. Ye-Sool, who was always confident and calm before, is now clearly nervous and tries to avoid him. This raises even more questions in him. He begins to wonder what has caused this sudden change and assumes that it's not just a matter of professional differences. The situation escalates when a major new project begins at work that requires them to work closely together. Despite her attempts to keep her distance, the situation forces them to interact more and more. They find themselves in the same workspace, discussing ideas and making decisions together. Ye-Sool struggles to hide her real feelings and anxiety, but she finds it increasingly difficult to do so. Every glance at Min-Hoo reminds her of what she saw, and her inner discomfort continues to grow. At the same time, her ex-boyfriend Lee Pil-yo returns to Ye-Sool, which adds even more chaos to her emotional life. Pil-yo, who still has feelings for her, suddenly appears on the horizon, trying to repair their relationship. His return triggers a host of conflicting feelings in her. On the one hand, she knows that things between them are no longer what they used to be, but on the other hand, her memories of the past and uncertainty about the future with Min-Hoo make her wonder. Pil-yo's appearance only complicates the situation, adding a new level of anxiety to her life. Meanwhile, Min-Hoo begins to pay more attention to how Ye-Sool behaves around him. He senses her nervousness and tries to figure out what happened. Although he doesn't know that the vision was the cause of her anxiety, his intuition tells him that there's more behind it than a simple work disagreement. His own feelings for her begin to change as well, though he doesn't fully understand exactly what those feelings are. Under constant pressure at work and in her personal life, Ye-Sool begins to get lost in her emotions. Her constant attempts to avoid Min-Hoo will only make the situation even more difficult. She realizes that the future may be inevitable, but still hopes that she has the power to change it. The question of whether her visions can be changed or are predetermined becomes a major topic of contemplation for her. After the tension between Ye-Sool and Min-Hoo continues to escalate, they find themselves embroiled in an even more complicated and confusing relationship. At the center of this conflict is Ye-Sool's vision that she received after accidentally kissing Min-Hoo. This predicted future scene where they find themselves in a close romantic relationship continues to haunt her. Despite her best efforts, her vision remains in her mind, causing her to avoid any opportunity to be near him. However, work obligations and pressure on an important project force them to work closely together. At the same time, Lee Pil-yo, her ex-boyfriend who still has feelings for her and wants their relationship back, comes back into her life. His sudden appearance causes Ye-Sool to have a lot of doubts and conflicting emotions. On the one hand, she realizes that they are no longer in love, but his persistence makes her wonder if she should give him a second chance. But at the same time, the echo of the vision with Min-Hoo continues to echo in her head, making it difficult to make any decisions. Min-Hoo begins to pay more attention to Ye-Sool. He can't ignore her tense behavior and strange avoidance. His sensory abilities allow him to pick up on the slightest changes in her emotional state, but the cause of her anxiety remains a mystery to him. He doesn't know that her vision of the future is behind it, and he gradually begins to suspect that Ye-Sool is hiding something. This makes him want to dig deeper into what's going on, and perhaps even protect her. At work, the situation heats up. The project they are working on turns out to be much more complicated than anticipated. Clients are demanding more creative solutions, forcing Min-Hoo and Ye-Sool to spend a lot of time together, discussing strategies and making key decisions. Their frequent interaction only intensifies Ye-Sool's internal conflict, because each new interaction with Min-Hoo reminds her of a predicted future. She realizes that this future may be inevitable, but she is afraid to admit it to herself. At the same time, Pil-yo becomes more active in trying to repair his relationship with Ye-Sool. He tries to win her attention, organizing meetings and offering to talk about what's left between them. Ye-Sool, despite her past with Pil-yo, begins to feel that her connection to him is weakening, and that seeing him with Min-Hoo, as frightening as it may be, may hold something new for her life. Min-Hoo continues to feel increasingly attracted to Ye-Sool, though he doesn't admit it directly. His interest in her extends beyond his professional relationship, and his attempts to understand what exactly has changed in her behavior cause him to be around her more often. He begins to notice the little things, how she avoids his gaze, how nervous she is in his presence, but at the same time tries to behave professionally. This piques his interest even more and makes him wonder what's going on in her head. Against this backdrop, complications continue to arise at work, requiring Ye-Sool and Min-Hoo to work even more closely together. Client requests are becoming more and more demanding, and this only increases the amount of time they have to spend together. The more they interact, the harder it becomes for both of them to ignore the growing tension between them. Ye-Sool begins to wonder if she should accept the inevitable and let events unfold naturally, or continue to struggle with the predicted future. Ye-Sool's past and future collide as she tries to make sense of her feelings for Pil-yo and her growing attraction to Min-Hoo. She finds herself at the center of a love triangle where every choice seems wrong. But the most difficult question for her is whether she can change the predicted future, or whether it is already inevitable. Ye-Sool finds herself at the center of an emotional whirlwind caused by a vision in which she saw herself in a romantic relationship with her boss Cha Min-Hoo. This accidental kiss made her feel confused and anxious, because she's used to her visions always coming true. This time, however, the very thought that a future with her strict and demanding boss could become a reality terrifies her. Her emotional conflict only intensifies, and although she tries to keep her distance from Min-Hoo, her efforts seem futile. At this point, her cousin Ban Ho-woo comes to the rescue, recognizing her abilities and growing tension. Ho-woo, a person with a more philosophical and calm outlook on life, offers Ye-Sool important advice about her gift and how to deal with her emotions. The sister helps Ye-Sool look at her situation from a different perspective, suggesting that she should not be afraid of the predicted future, but learn to accept and use her abilities for good. She explains that feelings should not be suppressed, but rather listened to, as they can help her better understand herself and realize what is really important. Influenced by this advice, Ye-Sool decides to focus on her work to distract herself from her growing feelings for Min-Hoo and the vision that is constantly present in her head. She believes that if she keeps her mind busy, she'll be able to avoid the developments she's seen. However, with each new meeting with Min-Hoo, each time they discuss the project together, her visions become more vivid and emotional. She is no longer sure that her gift is reliable, and that the future she has seen is inevitable. Working on an important project becomes more and more challenging. Clients are demanding more and more creative solutions, forcing the team to work under more pressure. For Ye-Sool, this means having to work closely with Min-Hoo, which gives her mixed feelings. She tries to maintain a professional tone with her boss, but with each passing day, she feels the chemistry between them growing more and more and more. Min-Hoo, though she doesn't understand the real reason for her tense behavior, begins to notice that their interactions have become more personal. Amid growing stress at work, Ye-Sool's personal feelings for Min-Hoo become increasingly difficult to ignore. Her visions, which once seemed absolute, are beginning to be questioned. Ye-Sool herself doesn't understand how her gift actually works, and now she wonders if her abilities could be mistaken or changing. These questions create internal conflict, because up until this point her visions have always been accurate. However, the situation with Min-Hoo seems different. Her attraction to him is growing stronger, and she can't say for sure what will happen next. Min-Hoo, though still seemingly reserved at first, begins to show Ye-Sool more attention. He increasingly wonders what's behind her strange behavior and why she's become so withdrawn around him. Even though he doesn't know about her ability to see the future, his intuition tells him that something more is brewing between them. He begins to notice that there are new emotions in their professional interactions that are hard to ignore. Each encounter with Ye-Sool triggers strong feelings in him that he tries to hide, but which become increasingly obvious to himself. Meanwhile, despite Ho-Wo's advice, Ye-Sool continues to struggle with her inner fears. The stronger her feelings for Min-Hoo, the more she fears that her vision will come true after all. She wonders if her gift is so powerful, how can she resist the vision? Now, however, she begins to suspect that her ability to see the future may not be as reliable as she thought. Perhaps her visions are only one possible version of the future, not the final one. This discovery causes her to think again about how she really feels about Min-Hoo and how she should proceed. Work meetings with Min-Hoo continue, and they grow closer and closer despite her attempts to keep her distance. Ye-Sool realizes that it's hard for her to ignore what's going on between them. Her feelings grow stronger, and although she fears that the vision will become reality, she begins to allow that the future may not be as dire as she had envisioned. At the same time, the pressure at work intensifies, and Ye-Sool realizes that her personal experiences are beginning to interfere with her professional life. She is faced with the choice of continuing to struggle with her feelings or trying to accept them. Every interaction with Min-Hoo becomes emotionally intense, and their personal feelings increasingly intersect with work responsibilities. This tension begins to affect the entire team, as those around them also notice the growing closeness between them. At a certain point, Ye-Sool begins to realize that her feelings for Min-Hoo are more than just attraction. She realizes that a deep connection is developing between them, and her earlier fears about the future begin to subside. She is no longer convinced that her visions are an inevitability and begins to wonder if the future can be changed. Perhaps her visions are not a firm prediction, but simply a possibility that may not materialize. Min-Hoo, sensing the changes in Ye-Sool's behavior, begins to realize that his feelings for her have also gone beyond a normal working relationship. He's not sure how to handle this, but realizes that he can no longer ignore his affection for her. He begins to act more open and caring, although he tries not to show how strong his feelings are. His behavior becomes softer, and Ye-Sool notices this. Eventually, Ye-Sool is faced with an important choice. She can no longer deny that her feelings for Min-Hoo are real, but she's still plagued by the question, is her vision really inevitable? She wonders whether she should keep fighting what she has seen, or whether it is better to accept the possibility that the future may be different. This internal conflict becomes the main theme of the episode as Ye-Sool tries to balance her feelings and fears about the future. After an emotional confrontation with Min-Hoo, Ye-Sool finds herself in a situation where she has trouble keeping her cool. The mutual tension caused by her vision and strange behavior continues. Min-Hoo is now certain that something is going on, and his attempts to figure out what it is are becoming more and more insistent. Meanwhile, Lee Pil-yo doesn't back down and tries to get back into a relationship with Ye-Sool, adding a new twist to her emotional conflict. Ye-Sool finds herself at a crossroads. Her past with Pil-yo, whom she once trusted, begins to intersect with her future, foretold in a vision with Min-Hoo. Each encounter with Min-Hoo strengthens her anxiety more and more, as every gesture he makes, every interaction reminds her of what she saw. However, her former feelings for Pil-yo make her wonder, can she go back in time and start anew, as Pil-yo suggests. Min-Hoo, not realizing that her strange behavior is related to her vision, begins to show great persistence in trying to understand her. As usual, he analyzes Ye-Sool's behavior through his hypersensitivity, sensing her emotions even before she herself is aware of them. These abilities give him an advantage in their interactions, and he begins to show care and attention, which in turn confuses her even more. The more he tries to help, the more Ye-Sool realizes that he can't ignore her predictions about the future. However, the closer they get, the harder it becomes for Ye-Sool to deal with her thoughts. She begins to notice that Min-Hoo is also changing his attitude toward her. His warm feelings for her, even though hidden behind his professional strictness, are gradually becoming apparent. She realizes that there is more than just a working relationship between them. Meanwhile, Pil-yo does not give up. He keeps making attempts to win her back, and this only adds further tension. His persistence causes Ye-Sool to have a lot of flashbacks to the past, when their relationship seemed perfect. But as each day passes, she realizes more and more that her feelings for Pil-yo are not what they used to be. Gradually, she begins to realize that her heart no longer belongs to him, and despite all the confusion with Min-Hoo, her attraction to him becomes more apparent. The situation at work also becomes more complicated. The project requires more attention and more time, forcing Min-Hoo and Ye-Sool to spend even more time together. In one tense moment when the team faces a crisis, Min-Hoo shows concern for Ye-Sool, which confuses her. He unexpectedly supports her and helps her cope with the emotional strain, and this brings out mixed feelings in her. She begins to question perhaps her vision isn't necessarily what she envisioned. Perhaps she has a chance to influence how that future unfolds. During one of their shared dinners with the team, Ye-Sool and Min-Hoo find themselves alone at the table. Their communication, filled with hidden emotions, becomes a moment of intimacy. Min-Hoo, sensing that something is changing between them, tries to create a moment of conversation, but Ye-Sool, still confused, shies away from frank communication. She realizes that her affection for Min-Hoo is growing, but fears that her vision will eventually ruin what they might have. Meanwhile, an important new client shows up at work, and the project reaches a new stage. Ye-Sool and Min-Hoo continue to work together, their professional skills and teamwork increasingly intertwined with their personal feelings. Ye-Sool sees how Min-Hoo begins to care about her not only as an employee but also as a person, and her fear of the future begins to transform into something else, expectation and even hope. Ye-Sool increasingly realizes that she can't ignore her feelings for Min-Hoo. Despite her attempts to avoid the predicted future, she begins to realize that her visions may not be a predetermined fate, but an opportunity for choice. But despite all this, she continues to struggle with an inner fear. Perhaps she's just not ready to accept that this future could be exactly as she's seen it. As work continues on a major project, Ye-Sool and Min-Hoo are forced to interact more and more. Despite her attempts to keep her distance, their shared tasks and the need to make important decisions lead to them spending a lot of time together. Ye-Sool feels that her internal conflict between her vision of the future and her present emotions is only getting worse, and every day it becomes harder and harder for her to ignore what is happening between her and Min-Hoo. Ye-Sool begins to notice that Min-Hoo is no longer just a boss to her. He shows care and attention that goes beyond work ethics, and she can't ignore the emotions she feels around him. However, her fear of her vision becoming a reality continues to plague her. Every time she senses their relationship reaching a new level, she is plagued by anxiety because she is still not sure if she wants that future to become a reality. Min-Hoo, for his part, begins to realize that his feelings for Ye-Sool have become stronger than he expected. His hypersensitivity gives him a sense of how much Ye-Sool is worried, but he doesn't understand the reason for her worries. He sees that she is hesitant and that her behavior is becoming increasingly inconsistent. This raises questions for him, and he decides that he needs to talk to her frankly to get to the bottom of their relationship. Against this backdrop, Pil-yo continues to pursue his goals of repairing his relationship with Ye-Sool. He arranges several meetings during which he tries to convince her that they can start over. But Ye-Sool realizes that her feelings for Pil-yo have faded. Every time she meets him, she realizes that her heart is already pulling in the other direction towards Min-Hoo. Pil-yo begins to notice this and gradually realizes that her attention already belongs to someone else. Meanwhile, a project at work reaches a climax. Their client demands new ideas and original solutions from the team, which leads to additional stress for all employees. In one particularly stressful work meeting, Min-Hoo and Ye-Sool find themselves in the spotlight when they need to jointly present new concepts to the client. They do an excellent job, which again strengthens their professional interaction. However, this professional victory only adds to their emotional tension. After the successful meeting, the team has a company dinner where the atmosphere becomes less formal. During the dinner, Min-Hoo and Ye-Sool find themselves next to each other. In the relaxed atmosphere, they begin to talk more openly than usual, and this leads to a moment where their emotions come to the surface. Min-Hoo decides to make the first move and confess to Ye-Sool, that he has feelings for her that go beyond their working relationship. Ye-Sool, stunned by his candor, doesn't know how to react. On the one hand, her heart is drawn to him, and she feels like she could be happy around him. On the other hand, her anxiety about the vision still makes her hesitant. She is afraid that if she lets these feelings develop, her vision will become a reality, and it could ruin them both. She's not sure if she's ready to take that risk. In parallel, Min-Hoo continues to show her signs of attention, showing her care and support in work and personal moments. His feelings become more and more obvious to those around him, and coworkers begin to notice that something is going on between them. Rumors in the office that there may be more than just a working relationship between them begin to spread, which adds extra pressure on Ye-Sool. In this difficult emotional situation, Ye-Sool realizes that she has a choice to make. Either she continues to fight the predicted future and stays at a distance from Min-Hoo, or she accepts her feelings and lets events unfold naturally. But her fear of the unknown and the possibility of being wrong keeps her from making a final decision. Min-Hoo, sensing her inner struggle, decides to give her time and space to sort herself out, but his own feelings for her are growing stronger. He's not ready to back down and is determined to prove to Ye-Sool that their future can be different than she sees, and that they can create their own rules. After Min-Hoo admits that he has feelings for Ye-Sool, the situation becomes even more tense. He's made it clear that his interest in her goes beyond a professional relationship, and now the future Ye-Sool saw seems even more likely. With each passing day, she found it harder to avoid the thought that the predicted future could become a reality. Even though her heart is drawn to Min-Hoo, she's still afraid of what she saw, and her fear of ruining their relationship before it begins paralyzes her. At the same time, Min-Hoo decides not to pressure Ye-Sool, giving her time to sort out her feelings. However, his care and attention to her becomes more and more evident. He tries to support her at work and in her daily life, even if it's in small things. This caring does not go unnoticed, and coworkers in the office begin to discuss their relationship more and more. Rumors spread, which adds even more pressure on Ye-Sool, who is already on the verge of making an important decision. At the same time, the project they are working on reaches its final stage. The clients make the final demands and the team has to make a major presentation. Min-Hoo and Ye-Sool have to work side by side again, which only adds to their personal tension. Despite this, their professional skills complement each other brilliantly, and together they present powerful ideas to clients, which strengthens their team spirit. This success creates a moment of intimacy between them, with both realizing that their work together is inextricably tied to their emotional connection. However, just as Ye-Sool begins to soften and contemplate the possibility that a future with Min-Hoo might not be as dire as she had envisioned, Lee Pil-yo intervenes in her life again. He organizes a meeting where he makes a frank confession he still loves her and wants to resume their relationship. Pil-yo tries to convince her that they can go back to what they had, and that their past is worth reclaiming. This confession puts Ye-Sool in an even more difficult choice: her past with Pil-yo or a possible future with Min-Hoo, which still scares her because of the vision. Min-Hoo, sensing that Pil-yo could be a real threat to their possible relationship, begins to show signs of jealousy, though he tries not to show it too obviously. He realizes that Ye-Sool still hasn't made a final decision, and this makes him uneasy. Despite his feelings, he respects her privacy and tries not to interfere, but her indecisiveness is starting to worry him. Meanwhile, Pil-yo himself feels that the distance between him and Ye-Sool is growing more and more. He sees that her attention is gradually shifting to Min-Hoo, which makes him wonder if it makes sense to keep fighting for her heart. Pil-yo realizes that his feelings for Ye-Sool may no longer be reciprocated, but he's not ready to give up so easily. Ye-Sool, caught in the middle of this emotional triangle, feels torn between the two men and her fear of the future. Her vision with Min-Hoo is still in front of her eyes, and she realizes that if she lets her feelings run wild, that vision could become reality. But she also realizes that the future is not always predetermined, and perhaps she can change it if she wants to. This inner conflict forces her to withdraw into herself to find answers to questions that have plagued her for a long time. At some point, Ye-Sool decides that she can no longer stay away. She realizes that hiding from her feelings is not an option, and she needs to make a decision. During a frank conversation with Min-Hoo, she admits that she's attracted to him, but at the same time she's afraid of the events that might happen between them. Min-Hoo, hearing this, tries to convince her that the future doesn't have to be as she saw it, and that they can choose how it will be. This conversation becomes an important moment in their relationship. Ye-Sool begins to realize that perhaps her vision is not the final version of their future, but only one of the possible options. Her fears slowly begin to subside, and she realizes that she must be willing to take the risk to see how their relationship will develop. Min-Hoo, in turn, is willing to support her along the way, giving her space to figure things out for herself. Ye-Sool and Min-Hoo gradually begin to bond despite her fears and doubts. After a frank conversation in the previous episode, they decide that they will no longer avoid their feelings and try to figure out what's going on between them. However, for Ye-Sool, this decision does not come easily. She is still troubled by the vision they found themselves in romantically and fears that their future is predetermined. Doubts about whether she can change what she saw continue to haunt her. Min-Hoo, for his part, shows patience and understanding. He makes it clear that he is willing to support her and wait for her to accept her feelings. Despite this, he begins to wonder if she will ever be able to overcome her fears and allow their relationship to progress naturally. His feelings for her are growing stronger, but he realizes that her anxiety is yet to subside. Work continues on the project, and more situations require them to work together. This means they spend a lot of time together, and the more they work together, the more chemistry builds between them. Ye-Sool is starting to feel that their relationship has grown much closer, and she's becoming less and less afraid of what the predicted future might hold. However, her inner conflict keeps her on her toes. She tries not to think about the future, but every time she finds herself alone with Min-Hoo, her thoughts return to the moment she saw. Meanwhile, Lee Pil-yo continues to fight for Ye-Sool's attention. He can't accept that their relationship is finally over, and does everything he can to win her back again. He tries to organize meetings, gifts to remind her of the past, and even discusses the possibility of starting over. However, Ye-Sool begins to realize that her feelings for him have really changed. She no longer feels the way she used to feel, and now realizes that her future with Pil-yo is a closed chapter. Min-Hoo begins to notice the tension caused by Pil-yo's presence, and it makes him internally jealous. Although he tries not to interfere with Ye-Sool and her ex, it becomes clear to him that Pil-yo still plays a definite role in her life. Min-Hoo feels threatened, but decides to let Ye-Sool work out her feelings for herself, even though his anxiety about Pil-yo is growing. Pil-yo himself, however, is beginning to realize that he has little chance of winning Ye-Sool back. He sees her attention shifting more and more to Min-Hoo, and realizes that their past no longer matters. This realization is a hard blow to him, and he begins to feel despair. He eventually decides that he needs to talk to Ye-Sool frankly to understand how she really feels and whether he has a chance to win her back. Alongside this, new challenges arise at work. Clients demand new solutions, and the team faces challenges that could derail the project. Min-Hoo and Ye-Sool are forced to work even closer together to solve the problems that arise. This working together helps them bond even more, and Ye-Sool begins to realize that she enjoys being around Min-Hoo. She sees him not only as a strict boss but also as a caring person who supports her in all her difficult situations. At some point, Ye-Sool realizes that her vision doesn't necessarily mean something negative. She begins to realize that her future with Min-Hoo may not be as dire as she imagined. It might even be something good for her. This realization gives her the strength to start letting go of her fears. She decides to no longer fight what is predicted, but to embrace the possibility that there could be something real and positive between them. Min-Hoo feels Ye-Sool starting to open up to him, and it gives him confidence that they are moving in the right direction. He begins to show more care and attention to her, gradually growing closer to her, not only as a boss, but as someone who is genuinely interested in her well-being. After Ye-Sool decides not to avoid her feelings and try to give a chance at a possible future with Min-Hoo, their relationship begins to take on new colors. Now, despite her still present fears, she feels that she can let her emotions develop naturally. However, her anxiety related to the vision does not disappear completely, and she occasionally wonders if she can really change her fate or if everything is predetermined. Min-Hoo, on the other hand, sees that Ye-Sool is beginning to trust him more and open up about his feeling. This builds his confidence that they can build something special. Although he continues to be patient, he no longer hides his true intentions, which makes their interactions more candid. An emotional connection grows between them, and it becomes noticeable not only to them but also to those around them. At the office, rumors that something is going on between Min-Hoo and Ye-Sool begin to gain momentum. Colleagues observe their closeness and speculate about what's going on behind the scenes of their professional relationship. This puts extra pressure on Ye-Sool because she's not used to being the center of attention. Min-Hoo, though aware that employee conversations can create a tense environment, doesn't let it interfere with their personal lives. Meanwhile, Lee Pil-yo finally realizes that his chances of winning Ye-Sool back are melting away. He sees her attention and feelings focused on Min-Hoo and realizes that his place in her life is slowly disappearing. This realization weighs heavily on Pil-yo, as he had long hoped to rekindle their relationship. He decides to arrange another meeting with Ye-Sool to set the record straight. Their conversation is painful. Pil-yo admits that they no longer have the connection they used to have, and, despite his feelings, lets her go. This encounter leaves Ye-Sool with a sense of closure. She realizes that her past with Pil-yo has come to an end, and her focus is now entirely on her relationship with Min-Hoo. This gives her a certain sense of relief, though she still has the fear that she can't fully control her future. At work, things are becoming increasingly tense as the project enters its final stages. The clients are demanding final results, and this puts more pressure on the whole team. Ye-Sool and Min-Hoo once again find themselves at the center of the action, solving complex problems and making important decisions. Working together brings them even closer together, and they begin to realize that their partnership is not just limited to the workplace. In the moments when they tackle crises together, their mutual trust and support become evident to all. On one particularly busy workday, Ye-Sool and Min-Hoo spend a lot of time alone together, discussing important project details. Their interactions become increasingly personal, And at some point Min-Hoo decides that he can no longer hide his feelings. He takes it a step further by openly declaring his desire to be with her. This moment is a turning point for Ye-Sool. She realizes that she can no longer deny her feelings for him. Together, they begin to discuss their fears and anxieties. Min-Hoo tries to convince Ye-Sool that they can control their future despite all the visions. He says that he believes in their ability to decide for themselves what their lives will be like, and this gives her confidence. Ye-Sool begins to realize that her gift is not a curse, but an opportunity to see options for the future. But the final decision is always up to her. After Min-Hoo and Ye-Sool decide to start building their relationship, they both realize that the journey will not be easy. Even though they sincerely want to be together, there are still many obstacles and interferes in their lives. Ye-Sool continues to struggle with anxiety caused by her gift of foresight. Although she now trusts her feelings more and is beginning to accept that she can control her own destiny, her past doubts still haven't completely disappeared. Min-Hoo, sensing that Ye-Sool is still troubled by her visions, decides to support her by offering more time, patience, and understanding. He knows that their relationship requires deep trust and is willing to help her deal with any fears that may arise. However, Min-Hoo himself is also experiencing certain difficulties. His hypersensitivity makes life difficult, especially in moments of strong emotion, when his feelings for Ye-Sool become more vivid and intense. At work, the situation is also starting to get more complicated. The project they've been working on is reaching the finish line, but the client is unhappy with the progress and requires reworking some key aspects. This puts additional pressure on the entire team, especially Min-Hoo and Ye-Sool, who are in leadership positions. Under stress, their emotional relationships are also put to the test. Sometimes their professional disputes become too personal. At the moment of greatest stress, Lee Pil-yo decides to visit Ye-Sool one more time. He realizes that their relationship is finally over, but still can't accept that she chose Min-Hoo. The meeting between them becomes emotional and frank. Pil-yo admits that he was wrong in his attempts to win her back, and wishes her happiness with Min-Hoo. This closes for Ye-Sool the last emotional issue that has been weighing on her, and she now feels she can fully focus on her present and future with Min-Hoo. While preparing for the final presentation for a client, Min-Hoo and Ye-Sool encounter another professional hurdle when one of the team members makes a mistake that could cause the entire campaign to fail. Together they work on a solution to the problem, and it brings them together again, reminding them how well they work in tandem, not only as co-workers but as partners in life. After the successful completion of the project, they decide to celebrate together. With an evening spent together, they openly discuss their feelings and future plans. Ye-Sool, though still afraid of the unknown, finally begins to feel more confident about her future with Min-Hoo. She no longer sees her visions as something that could ruin her life, but rather as a chance to make the right choices. Min-Hoo, for his part, is willing to support her through any difficulties that may arise, and their relationship seems stronger than ever. For a long time she tried to ignore a vision that was revealed to her after a casual kiss with her boss, where they found themselves in an intimate relationship. This prediction was the cause of her internal struggle, because she believed that if she could see the future, then it was inevitable. Ye-Sool tried to resist it, convincing herself that she could avoid such an outcome by controlling her emotions and keeping her distance. However, with each new day she found it harder and harder to keep herself from admitting her true feelings. For Ye-Sool, her ability to see the future was always an accurate reflection of what would happen. The visions she had received throughout her life had always come true, a fact that horrified her at the thought of the inevitability of events that could ruin her life. However, as her feelings for Min-Hoo became more explicit and deeper, she began to wonder if her gift was really predicting an inevitable future, or was it just one possible scenario? The thought that her abilities might not be as reliable as she thought opened up a new perspective for her. Ye-Sool began to doubt that the future was completely predetermined, and this was an important step in her realization. Min-Hoo, for his part, had long felt that there was more between them than just a working relationship. His own hypersensitivity abilities allowed him to pick up on the smallest changes in her moods and behavior. It allowed him to sense her anxiety and insecurities. He sensed that her aloofness and attempts to avoid close interactions with him had underlying reasons, related not only to professional obligations but also to something personal. Although he didn't know what exactly was behind her strange behavior, his intuition told him that something more was brewing between them. Each new meeting at work became more and more emotionally intense. Ye-Sool continued to try to keep her distance, but her inner conflict intensified with every look and gesture from Min-Hoo. Her feelings for him became so strong that she could no longer ignore them. Her vision, which had initially seemed clear and frightening, was now becoming less and less convincing to her. She began to realize that her gift did not give absolute truth, and perhaps the future depended on her own decisions rather than predictions. Min-Hoo, for his part, begins to show more and more concern for Ye-Sool. He sees how she suffers from internal struggles and wants to help her sort through her emotions. In the moments when they discuss work or just being around each other, his feelings for her become more and more obvious to himself. He can no longer ignore their mutual attraction, and despite her attempts to distance herself, he decides to have a frank conversation with her. This conversation becomes a turning point for them. Min-Hoo asks Ye-Sool what's going on and why she's acting so strange and avoiding him. Ye-Sool, who has been trying to hide the truth for a long time, finally decides to reveal her fears to him. She confesses that she has seen them together in the future and fears that this future is inevitable. This confession is a huge step for her, because before she had never told anyone about her gift and believed that it controlled her life. Now that the truth has been revealed, she feels immense relief but is still afraid that her vision could ruin what they have. Min-Hoo listens to her with attention and understanding. He's surprised by her confession, but he doesn't judge her. His own hypersensitivity has helped him understand people better, and now he sees that her fears are deeply rooted in her ability to see the future. But instead of distancing himself, Min-Hoo decides to support her. He tells her that visions are just one possible scenario and that they can choose their own future. These words give Ye-Sool hope maybe her gift isn't controlling her life the way she previously thought. Min-Hoo confesses that his feelings for her are real and strong, and that he is willing to accept any future if they are together. To him, her abilities aren't a threat. He believes that they can create their future on their own, despite any visions or predictions. This conversation gives Ye-Sool the confidence that she can trust her feelings and not be afraid of the future. After this conversation, their relationship begins to grow on a new level. Now that there are no secrets between them, they can talk openly about their feelings and build their future together. Ye-Sool is no longer afraid of her visions because she realizes that they show only one possible version of events. Her gift is not a judgment, but simply an opportunity to see options for the future. Min-Hoo, in turn, feels more confident in their relationship because now they can move forward knowing that their love is more important than any predictions. Their interactions at work become more natural and tension-free. Now that they have both acknowledged their feelings, they can work together without hiding their emotions. This allows them to become even closer to each other, both in their professional and personal lives. Both heroes realize that their abilities do not determine their fate. They can decide what their future will be, and this realization brings them a sense of freedom and confidence. Min-Hoo and Ye-Sool together decide not to be afraid of what might happen anymore. They are ready to face any challenges and build their future together based on their feelings and mutual trust. Their bond grows stronger and they both realize that the future is not predetermined by their abilities, it depends on their own decisions. After a long journey of doubts, fears, and fighting for control of their lives, Ye-Sool and Min-Hoo finally realize that their unique abilities are just part of their existence, but they don't define who they are or what their relationship means to them. This episode brings them to an important moment where they must choose between fear of fate and belief in free will. Ye-Sool continues to have internal doubts about the visions that have haunted her throughout. She used to rely on her abilities as an unquestionable source of information about the future. The visions came true with startling accuracy, and it made her dread the predicted future with Min-Hoo. Despite her deep feelings for him, she remained in a state of internal struggle for a long time, fearing that their relationship was predestined by her gift. By this point, however, Min-Hoo had fully realized that his feelings for Ye-Sool went beyond their working relationship and developed into something much deeper. Despite his hypersensitivity, which has made his life more complicated and vulnerable, he realizes that their love is more important than any fear of the supernatural. Min-Hoo helps Ye-Sool see that the future is not the fixed line she sees in her visions. He convinces her that the future is multivariate and depends on their decisions. Min-Hoo says that despite their unique abilities, they have the freedom to choose their paths and determine what they want for themselves and their relationships. This conversation proves to be a turning point for Ye-Sool. She begins to accept the idea that her visions are not absolute truth, but merely one version of a possible future. Her former confidence that each vision accurately reflects what is to come begins to dissipate. She realizes that she doesn't need to be afraid of her feelings for Min-Hoo, and that they can build their lives together without depending on the visions. This realization brings Ye-Sool relief, and she begins to feel that she can let go of her fear of a predetermined future. Min-Hoo, for his part, also realizes the importance of their relationship. Despite his own struggle with hypersensitivity, his ability to sense the slightest changes in the world around him makes him extremely vulnerable, especially when it comes to intense emotional distress. However, he realizes that these abilities can't control his feelings and decisions. Min-Hoo convinces Ye-Sool that their abilities are only a small part of who they are. He tells her that they shouldn't let their gifts control their lives, and that the most important thing is their choice and freedom to make their future the way they want it. Amidst this deep conversation, Ye-Sool and Min-Hoo make a decision to no longer fear the future. They decide to trust each other and go forward, accepting every possible challenge that may arise. Instead of living in fear of what is predicted, they decide to accept life as it is, realizing that their love and mutual support will help them through any difficulties. Ye-Sool finally lets go of her fears of the vision, and it brings her a great sense of relief. She realizes that her gift is not a curse, but merely a tool that can help her see possibilities, but does not oblige her to follow the predicted path. Min-Hoo is also relieved when they decide together to live in the present and not depend on their abilities. The important point becomes their joint recognition that they can build their lives together despite whatever challenges may lie ahead. They realize that the future is not something fixed, but something they create themselves based on their feelings and decisions. Ye-Sool is no longer afraid that her abilities might predetermine her life, and Min-Hoo realizes that his hypersensitivity doesn't make him weak, but instead helps him better understand those around him and himself. Their final scene together epitomizes their complete acceptance of themselves and each other. They embrace, looking forward to the future with optimism and confidence that they can handle any difficulties. This moment shows that their love and bond is much stronger than any supernatural forces that previously seemed insurmountable to them.